Chapter 1. Judge and Jury. The Hide. I checked my surroundings carefully. It is second nature and gives me a calm sense of control. With the full 360-degree surveillance completed, I tensed my calf muscles, beginning another round of exercises. I had been in hiding for 18 hours, and as usual on this type of mission, hourly isometric exercises were vital for staying prepared. In a few minutes, the target would emerge from his garage, carrying his newspaper and whistling some made-up tune. The target. He stood 5 feet 10 inches tall and had a paunch belly from too much beer. His hair grew gray and long, a sign his life had been lived too long in my estimation. He had been sent to juvenile detention in his youth for statutory rape, and he had been apprehended twice in his adult life but never again convicted. I looked down at the 4 pictures my research had uncovered. 4 sweet young girls destroyed by a monster whistling tunes only known within the confines of his demented skull. He had a family with 2 daughters, but that didn't weigh into my decision except to keep them from harm. One was just beginning to blossom, and knowing this type of reprobate, she would become fair game. The black stone he had received 6 days ago sat on the desk in his study. It had the Roman numeral 6 on its cut and polished surface. He had forgotten about the funny gift taped to his steering wheel when he had come out of the bar. Chances were no one would consider it important as long as Detective Christian from Texas did not receive the incident report. Execution. The light rain moistened in the driveway, making it a little slippery. The garage door's electric motor engaged, and it slid up on its tracks. He whistled but seemed perturbed by the drizzle. Holding his newspaper over his head, he walked out to the car and fumbled one-handed with the lock. I was 1,500 feet away and the wind would have no effect. Sighting, I took the first shot. His scream startled the neighborhood as he reached for a crotch that no longer existed. I had used a hollow-point round tearing through his flesh. The second solid brass projectile was much more merciful. It entered his temple and ended the tormented sound of his screams forever. His body slumped over in a crumpled mess of blood, gore, and brain matter. Calmly picking up my brass and weapon, I began my exit. I broke the gun down and placed it in a foam-filled suitcase that fit right behind the truck toolbox, its hidden panel well defended by my mastery of metalwork. I slowly folded the tarp, making sure none of my evidence slipped off, and stored it at the bottom of the toolbox. One final check of the hideout, and I considered it cleared. It was time to move on to the next phase of the escape. I took off the military coveralls I had purposefully dyed to match the surroundings of the hide. The boots and the form-fitting gloves were also removed and bagged. These would be deposited in a furnace across town, but for now they were stuffed in with the gun case. On the passenger seat of the truck was a stylish pink summer dress. I loved the way it made me look, and after using face cream and paper towels to remove the camouflage from my face, I donned the dress. Letting my hair down and shaking it into place, I took out a compact and painted on my next mask, that of a young lady driving to work on a drizzly day. Traffic clogged the neighborhood as the egresses were guarded by the flashing lights of police vehicles. I drove by the entrance, observing the arm waves of the cop directing traffic. I had no reason to look into the neighborhood and ask questions. Smiling at the officer as he waved me through, I cleared the impediment, headed south for a few miles, and then changed direction toward the furnace to finish my cleanup. The posse. I will admit the stone was an issue, but something deep inside of me wanted these monsters to know doom was upon them. The problem with being a sniper was that it was not up close and personal. Of the 42 kills so far, 34 had shown major signs of worry, and most had been found with the stone in their pocket at their time of death. So far, the stone had stumped rather than helped law enforcement. 2 major city detectives came up with the theory that the stone was an access token to one of the many deviant underground networks. Show your stone and get inside the deviant den. This caused a nationwide hunt for a criminal network, leaving me to my solitary stalk. The stones were the only physical evidence my detective from Texas had. But this had not stopped his inquiry. He knew something was out of place, and these killings were not random. He had the uncanny ability to put small snippets of information together and come up with a solid theory. He was a good detective, and as far as I could observe, a good man. Unlike the wonderful detective movies I loved to watch on a rainy day, this criminal was not caught up in her fatal flaw. Everything I did was planned and properly executed. I had a great deal of work to accomplish, and getting caught was not part of the plan. Since my picture had first appeared on a milk carton, I had been in training for my life's work, to rid the world of 100 rapists. Chapter 2. About Milk Cartons. Real Pain. I was 13 when I had found the milk carton with my picture on it. By that time I was street smart and beyond the reach of authorities or parents. It had been 6 years since my abduction, and the hell I had gone through had removed any little girl dreams I might have had. For the next 3 years I traveled the dark alleys of runaways and criminals, discarded by society as a petty thief. At the end of this 3-year period, I found my way back to my hometown and spent 6 months observing what was left of my family. My mother had committed suicide 2 years after my abduction, unable to live without her daughter, blaming herself for not keeping a better eye on me at the playground. My father drank. He sat on the porch of the house, slowly decaying around him, and drank. My mother was his world, and I'd been his princess. Now alone, there was no life or adventure. So he drank and awaited his God's final call to take him from this vale of tears. I suppose I could have walked up the cracked sidewalk and reintroduced myself, saving him from his hell. It would have been the Christian thing to do. From the 5-story burned-out building where I watched, I felt his pain. The pain inside of me was the counterpoint to the argument raging in my brain. He needed love, and I sought revenge. Tears flowed down my cheeks without let-up, and for the first time in my young life I wept openly. I loved the man so much, but the destruction done to me stopped any melting of my vengeful heart. I am sorry, Daddy, but I must make them pay, even if it means you must suffer. Turning points. My daddy had loved to play with me, and he had helped me see anything was possible if you worked at it. He had been filled with laughter and a never-give-up attitude that was infectious. When I told him I wanted to be an astronaut, he had laughed and grabbed my hand, rushing me out to the backyard. There he began making plans for my astronaut training center. Daddy, would you understand? I need to train, and I need to do it so you are never made part of my deeds. I love you too much to bring you on this journey. My thoughts ended the argument. Steeling my heart and stemming the flow of my tears, I left the rolling hills of Peekskill, New York behind me and made my way to Buena Vista, Georgia. With the help of a friendly innkeeper, I would start training for my new mission. Military plans. As I crossed the Mason-Dixon line, I left my proper name behind, and using my forged documents, I began building the life of Margaret Callahan, a runaway taken in and adopted by the friendly innkeeper so she could enter the army at Fort Bragg, Georgia. I had just turned 16, and with a little luck, I would get my new parents' permission to allow me to enlist at 17. If not, I would patiently wait out the final year of my youth and enlist at 18. Mr. William Masterton ran the Morning Dove bed and breakfast in the quiet town of Buena Vista, Georgia. I had met him twice in my travels, and both times he allowed me to do chores around his property for dinner and some traveling money. Now I would ask him one more favor. Help me get into the Army. I knew it would make him proud, having noticed the regimental flag of the 29th Infantry above his fireplace mantel. As I pulled into the drive on my motorcycle, the thought of the dove and the soldier tickled my fancy. Mr. Masterton stepped out on the porch and replicated my happy grin as I removed my helmet. "Now there is a very happy young lady." His voice carried over the loud rumble of my idling bike. Turning off the machine and placing the helmet on the seat, I ran up to the porch and gave my benefactor a giant hug. I am back home, and the Georgia sun always makes me smile. He laughed, very much like the laugh of my father. "I hope you don't mind, but I need somewhere to stay, and I couldn't think of anyone but you." I watched his reaction, and, like my father, he did not hesitate or show shock. He laughed, returned the hug, and pointed me toward the jar of lemonade on the porch next to the big rockers. "You know you're always welcome here. Always." He poured a glass of lemonade and passed it over. "How long will your visit be this time?" I pushed aside the question and tried to chat about silly things, but he gently moved me back to my purpose, and somehow I let down my natural guard for this kind man and told him my plans to join the army. The afternoon breeze, filled with peach blossoms and magnolias, worked with the delightful lemon concoction to gently remove the bustle of the world. I fell into the southern cadence of the second man to love me. By dinner time, his late wife's special fried chicken recipe, William Masterton had agreed to adopt a runaway named Margaret Callahan, whose only possession was a library card from Boulder, Colorado, and committed to signing the waiver allowing me to join the Army a year early. As I drew the soft handmade comforter up to my chin, I ticked off the first step in my plan: find a family to foster my entrance into sniper training.